Welcome to the November Economic Update with Professor Joe Nellis. Now, Joe, lots of things to discuss this month. UK GDP, very disappointing figures, minus 0.4% in quarter three. What's your reaction?
This was a shock. Most analysts were expecting perhaps zero growth or some positive growth, very slightly positive. But this was a shock. A drop of 0.4% in GDP means that now the recession, in terms of from peak to trough, we've had a fall of around about 6% in total. That's significant given that in the whole of the 1990s, the recession we had then, the fall was 2.5%. So this is by far and away the longest and deepest recession since official records began in 1955.
There seems to be a mismatch between the survey data, the various indices coming out, and the official stats. Are they lagging?
There is a lagging effect here in that generally business confidence and consumer confidence is picking up. But of course, confidence is a forward-looking indicator, whereas GDP figures, they are backward-looking. And of course, these figures that were released, they're about 6 weeks after the end of Q3. We're already into Q4, and the signs are that things are beginning to improve.
We're lagging behind Germany, France, the US. What's the reason?
And we certainly are lagging behind them. We're now the sick man of Europe and of the world, in a sense, in terms of the industrial world. You've got to remember that our banking sector, financial services, is a huge part of our economy, significant part of our economy. And it has taken a knock, as we know. And restructuring in that sector will take several years to materialise. And so the scale of the restructuring has meant that the stimulus package it takes more time to impact on the economy and to ripple through the economy. So I think we are lagging behind, but I think it's a measure of just how sick we are.
Do you think we're going to be positive in Q4, and what's your forecast for 2010?
Let me be honest, I hope we're positive. Am I optimistic? I'm cautiously optimistic. We thought Q3 was going to be the turning point. But look, a turning point must come at some stage. And with the other signs that we mentioned about consumer confidence and business confidence, we do expect to see a turning point in Q4. But I'm not that excited in terms of growth prospects. So going into 2010, the Chancellor in the budget earlier this year was talking of growth figures of 3.5% for the year ahead. I just don't see it. There are too many negatives that are going to pull growth down. In particular, tax increases, well, they're coming and they're going to keep on coming. Government expenditure is being squeezed and will keep on being squeezed. I don't see 2010 being any more than modest growth. And, to hedge my bets, between 1% and 2%, I think would be a realistic forecast. I do not expect growth to be a trend or above trend, which would take it above 2.6%. I think that's too optimistic.
Is there still a possibility of a double dip?
There's a real possibility of that, and I see no reason to doubt that, given, as I've said already, the tax increases in the pipeline, the government expenditure cuts in the pipeline, and of course at some time in the future, interest rates will go up. They can't remain at 0.5% indefinitely. And so I think, we should be prepared for the possibility and for the likelihood of a double dip. But because we're preparing for it, let's hope we avoid it, of course.
The MPC starts its monthly meeting tomorrow, and commentators are saying we're going to see an increase in quantitative easing. Now, is the policy working? And if so, are we going to see more?
Difficult question to answer. Is it working? Because clearly the signs are very weak that it's working. But if you throw enough money at the economy, eventually it will stimulate spending and therefore recovery. So I would say it is working, but we are going to need some more. So I do expect to see more quantitative easing. And that also means, naturally, the cost of money will remain low. Interest rates are not going to change for some time. You don't pump more money in and at the same time make it more expensive. That just isn't logical. So is it working? Yes, but it's slow, and we're disappointed by that.
Let's look at the global picture. USA, good GDP figures for Q3, plus 3.5%. Manufacturing output on the rise. It's looking good.
USA is looking better. That's a fair point. But remember, they have had exceptional stimulus package, exceptional policy stimuli through government spending, especially things like the so-called cash for clunkers program, the scrappage scheme that we had in the UK. And that has pulled forward consumer spending. Of the 3.5% growth in GDP, which is an annualized figure, let's be careful, 2.4% of that percentage points is actually consumer spending. The other good news, as you said, manufacturing has improved in the US, and in particular, housing construction has reported a positive growth for the first time since 2005, which is really good news. So the US looks like it's on the recovery path and recovering quite strongly. Whether that will continue, same issues apply there as here, of course, in terms of future tax increases.
The Asian economies seem to be doing very well.
Steaming ahead is the phrase that's being used, especially China, of course. Growth is now back to what it would expect to be at, around about 8, 9, 10%, that sort of figure. Yeah, there's no doubt China is the engine of the world economy at the moment. But that engine, of course, relies on the world recovering, particularly America and the Western economies. So US recovery is great for China. US demand for Chinese exports is pulling China along. But also China itself as an economy is in good shape, good shape compared to many other economies. And so the internal economy in China is helping growth there as well.
So summing up, Joe, would you say you're cautiously optimistic for the world economy?
I am, but more cautious than I expected to be at this time, say 6 months ago. We did expect this 2009 to be a difficult year. We've said that several times. It has been a difficult year, perhaps even more difficult than I and other commentators expected, which leads me to believe that 2010, we shouldn't be over-optimistic, but cautiously optimistic is the appropriate phrase.
Joe, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Andrew.